Hey, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're looking at all the new updates to Enscape 2.9, brand new release. I know I'm a week late on the release, but nonetheless, you'll get to see all the new updates here. I want to cover them all in depth. Before we get into it, if at any point in this video you happen to learn something, please demolish that like button. It really helps me out a lot. Also, consider subscribing. That helps me too. All right, jumping into it now. We are in Enscape 2.9, and just to confirm that, we can go to Enscape and then About, and we can see, hey, look, there we go, 2.9, perfect. We're good to go. So I've got just a basic scene here, and we want to start to look at all the new features that we have with Enscape. Now, before I get into Enscape itself, we have all of the new features that show up in the asset library. When I click Asset Library, we're immediately prompted with this brand new screen that we haven't seen before. And of course, we have all the regular Enscape assets that we're familiar with, but we actually have this Custom Assets tab. And this allows us to store all the assets that we want. We can create our own. We can do really kind of anything, like build our own library. Now, I have mixed feelings on this. I can't see that I would necessarily take the time to build something like this, but if I have a specific object within a project that I want to use in other projects, or I want to have other people use in other projects, then I would probably build this. And this would be the type of thing that you'd kind of want to map as in a location to where everyone in the office, if you are in an office, that could use it. So I would recommend that you do that. So when you first get here, you're going to go to Custom Assets. You're going to have no assets. And we have a couple options here. We can create an asset, or we can batch import several models as assets. And I'm not going to go through the batching right now because I don't have any. So we're just going to create an asset. So whenever I click the plus, we're going to get a couple prompts here. One is going to say create an asset. Okay, the custom asset editor is running. Finish your work and close to access the Enscape asset library. Okay, great. So we're going to switch to the custom asset editor. But first, we're prompted to go through a couple steps here. And that is basically determine a location where you want these assets to be placed. And this is where I would say you want to map this to a network location so other people can access it if you are in fact on a network with other users. So I'll go ahead and locate this, and I'll just go to Enscape in my documents, and I went ahead and made a folder called assets, and I'm just going to put it there. I'll select the folder. That's great. I'll click next. And then here we got generated assets. Generating an asset from each asset project makes them usable within the custom asset library. Okay. I probably want this to be in the same folder. I'm okay with that. There might be a reason that you might not want to do that, but we'll determine that later. And I'll click save and close. And I would imagine you can change that location wherever you want. So here we go. We are in the Enscape custom asset editor. This seems kind of nice. Like there's a lot here. It looks like it's loading up. Once this is loaded up, we will then start to look at all of our different options here. So with this loaded up now, we don't have much options because we don't have an asset to work with. So we can either import geometry, we can choose new project, or an open project. In this, I don't have any project made. You can see I'm in project source, new project, so I'm not really working on anything here, but we want to start to import some geometry. If I click configure up here at the top right, we can see that, yes, I do have the option of changing this location later, which is really nice. If you want to jump somewhere else and you have a different library somewhere else, this is how you might do it. So that works too. So let's go to import geometry and see what we can work with. So we can work with object files, FBX files, like kind of what you would expect. So this is really nice that we can import FBX files. So I'm going to go find an FBX file, save it in this location, and we're going to get it opened. So I found an FBX online. I've got this wooden watchtower, and I've got all the files here that are associated with it, and there's my FBX. So I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to go to import geometry. And let's go back into this folder and choose my FBX. I've got a couple options here, but it looks like it's based on detail. So let's choose this one. And there we go. The nice thing is that I actually had these textures come in with it. All of these were downloaded together. It all came in one folder. And, this is what we have. I'm actually able to, pan around here like I can in Enscape. I can move around here. I can change the scaling if I want. I actually have the option of pressing different keys that would allow me to focus around the model. Of course, like in Enscape, I can double click a location and I can go to that location, which is really nice. Very quickly move around. So, this looks pretty good. It's got the textures and everything. But I've got a lot more that I could actually do here. I can change all kinds of settings here. I've got just the type that it is. In this case, I want to keep this as a default for what the materials are. I can change the tint for all these colors if I want. And this is looking at just this basic albedo. I can even look at this. You can see it looks really great. I can change, some of the specifics if I want. If I want to change this is all going to be updated in the asset thumbnail itself, which is really nice. I have the option of doing lots of different things here. I can set different values. I can change this if I had a different texture. Same with the height. That works kind of the same. Really nice. But as far as general, I'm just looking at the amount of all the different settings that I have that I can look at for these specific materials and the model itself. So I can make it self-illuminate if I want, which I don't want to. I can add a transparency texture. I can add reflections. This is really nice. Add metalness. Obviously, this is not a metallic surface. It happens to be wood, so I don't necessarily want to do that. But there's all kinds of things that I can do here, which is really nice. And so we can see right now under materials, it's really just everything falling under this watchtower material, which is pretty nice. And if I right click this, I can export this as a whole material package. Maybe you want to do that. Maybe you can apply that to other objects if you want. If I click on the thumbnail here with the little camera, it will basically take a screenshot, and that will be the screenshot that'll be used to display this whenever you're showing it off and whenever you're looking at this in the asset library itself. You can actually save the thumbnail into a temp file. So I could actually save this if I want to, which I don't want to, but I can. So I'm actually scrolling out in the thumbnail preview here. And because this is such a large model, it takes a lot longer, but the controls are all the same. So if I hold shift, I can zoom back farther. And if I hold control, I can zoom back even faster. So really nice stuff. And it basically is the same sort of navigation as if I were in Enscape. The WASD works all the same, but because it's, again, such a large model, it's hard for me to navigate around, and it just makes it a little more difficult to show. But you can see I can navigate just like I can in Enscape and see really what this looks like. So besides all the navigation in this preview, I actually have the option of hitting some numbers on the number pad if you have numbers. So if I hit 4, I could see a specific elevation view. 5 ends up being a top view. 6, another elevation view. 2, another elevation view. 8, another elevation. So the idea is that I can see the different elevations of this very quickly. And again, very quickly see that sort of view. So really nice, really easy to do that. You can zoom around, look at the model, whatever you want. You could change the up axis because maybe it came from a program that doesn't necessarily use Z as the up. I'm sure there are some that do that, but this happened to be that Y ended up being up, and I think in my mind Z should be up. So if I do that, we're going to get this kind of a layout, which this doesn't necessarily look right, and so maybe Y being up is actually correct. We'll basically have to determine that based on the particular model itself. So this looks good, and so I'm happy with this. If I actually had other materials that I could choose to go on this particular model, they would populate here. So again, this is really nice. I can change the title if I want. I'm just going to change this to Watchtower. So really nice. I can just then click Save Project. It's going to save this as an asset package. And so this is all going to be one linked element. One thing, one package. It's going to be one thing together. And so again, I'm probably going to save this in the same folder. And I'll go ahead and save that there. And so you can see that the project source is there. That's great. And I can even open the project and I can find the project right there. Even after I make a new project, I have no materials, no imported geometry, nothing. I can actually go back to open the project right there, and I'm going to get back just where I was, and I can make further edits here. And the nice thing about this is all the edits that I end up making in this particular asset or in this package will be saved, of course, to the package, but as long as everyone's still looking at these packages, it will update for everyone else. So this is really nice, and I'm glad that I can see that I can change it from a bump map to a normal map. That's going to help a lot because this is in fact a normal map. You can clearly see that based on the blue and the name. So this looks really good. I'll make sure and save this again. And because I've already saved it as a particular source, clicking Save Project just overrides it, which is really nice. Okay, so we have looked at all this. This looks good, but now I can actually generate the asset. So let's go ahead and do that. It will say asset generated. Okay. And then nothing else happens. So at this point, I'm prompted now to close the asset editor. I don't really need it. And then I'll make sure that I switch to the custom asset editor, and we can see as I go to my custom assets, I can see there's my watchtower. That is cool. That is really great. Really nice. I'm going to expand this particular view here, and then we'll start to place this watchtower out into my scene. So I'll click that, and just like anything else, just like any other asset, it's going to load it up here, and I just have to click and add it to my scene. So I will click, and it just so happens that it's not visible because it's probably somewhere else in the middle of nowhere. So I'll go ahead and remove my section box, and we can go ahead and find it because it might be that it doesn't necessarily show up where I want it to be, or it also might be that it is the incorrect scale, which you can see here, clearly the incorrect scale. This is giant. So I'm going to move over to Enscape, and we're going to see what this looks like. So I can see it there in my scene. This is obviously much too big. You can see the size of the house, and it's gigantic. So we have further edits to do. Not a big deal. At this point, I can choose to edit my asset there. And at this point, again, it will open the asset. I can always go back and I can open the asset, which is really nice. And then choose to edit this. We probably do need to look at the particular scale, because if you notice here, my scale is in meters. And this is a lot of meters. So let's go ahead and change the scale. I'm going to change this to 1 for now. And the nice thing is they all scale together. So this is starting to look better. I don't necessarily know the height of this, but I set the scale, set the height to 27 meters, and maybe it should be more like 10 meters, maybe 20 meters, maybe 15 meters. And I think this is a lot better. As far as the scale goes, I think it's actually going to look a lot better. You can see I can orbit around it and move around it fairly easily. That's mainly because the scale is now not nearly as large as what it was. So again, I will save the project. That's good. And I'm going to go ahead and take another screenshot right there so I can update what the preview looks like. I'm going to close this. Yes, I do want to save it, of course. And when I come back to my asset library, this should update, and I should be able to see that the watchtower is now a different size. Clicking on my watchtower again, I'll place it back in, and I can see that the scale has not yet changed. And once this is saved and ready to go, I again just need to generate this asset. And there we go. I can close this out, and we can see that now it's been updated. If you don't generate the asset, it won't actually update it, which is too bad. Now, I wish that the asset that were loaded into my project would have changed, but it does kind of make sense that this is the old asset with the wrong scale. So I'll just delete that. We'll go ahead and click on this watchtower. So once this is updated again, I can press this, and now we can see that the placeholder, this looks giant again. I'll go ahead and place this. Then let's go to Enscape and see what it looks like. See if it really is this large, which I really hope it isn't. So in Enscape now, I can see, well, it's not there, but where the heck? Oh, there it is. So this scale looks great. The problem is the placeholder, clearly the placeholder is too large. This is too big. So how do we fix that? Well, again, I'm just going to edit this one more time, and we can see where we can do that, because it's just too big. And it might be that because this was imported and because I saved it and didn't deal with the placeholder separately, that might be why. So with it here, I can see that I actually have a placeholder geometry, and I can actually pick a particular placeholder geometry. And now if I choose another geometry, it's likely that it will also include the size being too big. It's just kind of the way it works. But I can choose to show and preview, which means I can see what this looks like. And, from what I can tell, it looks like this new placeholder it's going to be the gray, and it looks like it's covering what it's supposed to, which is really nice. And I can choose to unlink that or remove that, of course. But let's go ahead and take one more screenshot just so we know this is updated, and make sure we generate it once we're done. And I actually do end up want to save this because I want it to actually be saved. So I'll save it, and then we can close this out. We'll make sure and see this updated again. And my hope now is that if I place it, the placeholder will also be smaller too. So before you end up loading in an asset, just make sure that the placeholder you're using is the correct size. And you can always come back in here and choose to update that if you want in the asset manager itself. We got a couple options here. We can place asset on active work plane, and that's kind of the default. So like whenever I just click that, I'm going to be adding this asset on the work plane. I can also place the asset on a surface, which is kind of cool. This is basically like placing on face. And I know this is giant, but you can see all the different faces I can choose, which is really nice. And then finally, I can link Revit family to asset. So like if I have a Revit family, I can end up linking that to this asset, which is, it's kind of cool. I can't say that I'm going to use those different options all that much. And I also can't say I'm going to use custom assets all that much. There's a lot that you can do with them and a lot that I didn't necessarily cover in great detail, but there's a lot more edits that you can go through if you want to really create a nice custom asset library. Of course, Enscape likes all of their assets, and they're really nice, really easy to bring in. They're really easy to include in your Revit model, but some of the new ones that we're looking at are fitness, which is great. We have all the new fitness asset, which is nice. And if you're doing a fitness studio, perfect. That'll be great for you. This is another great new feature within Revit and Enscape. And looking at Revit, we actually have the option of adding video textures as materials. And so like if you have this TV screen, which I do, I might want to add a video to this TV screen. Basically the idea is you've got this TV running in the background. It's nice. It looks real. And as you're walking around your scene, you've got this video playing. Like that is really cool stuff. And so there's a particular way that we're going to have to tackle this. And I'm going to leave the text that we're going to have to include specifically within the material in the description below. So make sure to see that there. What I'm going to do here in the specific material is it is very specific to adding a video. And, I wish it didn't have to be like this. I wish it was simpler, but the fact is we're adding a video texture to a material, which is really cool. So I'm going to go into this type. I'm going to reduce the size here a bit and then go into my screen material. And right now I have just a default material. And honestly, it can be any material whatsoever. So it doesn't necessarily really matter. But the idea is that I am simply going to add to the description of the identity tab a particular link to a video. And that will be shown and displayed on the TV, which is really cool. And so it's very simple to do. I simply have two brackets, and within the brackets will be all this information. I'll have video, colon, and then the actual link to the specific file, not just the location of where it is, but the link to the file itself, where if you went to that link, it would actually open the file. And then after that, I've got a vertical bar, and then I've got two numbers, and then another vertical bar, and then a final number. The first two numbers are going to be the scaling. And so if you want to get this precise, you're going to like measure the size of the screen that you want this video to be on. I don't necessarily want to stretch what you're displaying. So make sure you kind of keep the aspect ratio. Look at the details of the particular file type, the file that you're using, the video. Make sure you keep that ratio the same between like width and length and width and height, all of that. And then finally, the last number again is your rotation, and that rotation is going to depend on what it looks like on the screen. So I've got all this information here, and I know you can't see it, but I'll press OK, and then OK, and you can see that it's actually playing a video. Now, once again, I don't have the scaling right necessarily, but because I haven't gone to the trouble of measuring the size of the screen in both directions, but it's really nice and it's really simple. So something else I want to show you is a new feature within Enscape. And, I can't say that it's like a great new feature or anything, but you'll see the power of it immediately. So I'll go to General Settings. And once I open General Settings, there's a particular checkbox that was not there previously. And you'll find that under Preferences, and you'll find that under Performance. Of course, we've got this auto resolution, auto upscaling, grass, carpet rendering. We want to keep all that, the ray tracing, that looks good. But now we have this thing called rest mode. And rest mode says pauses animations and improves quality when movement stops. Okay, I mean, you can see over here that my video, which is not scaled correctly, is actually not playing. And that's because I'm not in Enscape. When I click Enscape, I'm still not seeing the video. And so I have to actually move the camera around slowly or move my location to see that this video is still playing. That seems kind of silly because I just want the video to play. Maybe I'm not moving. So that's what this rest mode is. As soon as I turn rest mode off, and go into Enscape, I could see that I'm not moving around and the video is playing. Of course, I can move around and the video will still play, but that's really nice, really simple. So that is video textures. And of course, there's a lot of different things that you can do with that. You can make fire in a fireplace, maybe a waterfall, something like that. But really pretty simple. You just put the correct text in there referencing a particular video file. You don't have to have a specific video, or you don't have a specific video name. You don't have to have a specific material name. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is putting the correct text in the description of the identity tab of that material. That's really it. So another cool feature within Enscape 2.9 is the fact that they have now allowed for displacement materials. And what is displacement? Well, I'm sure you're probably familiar with bump maps or normal maps, maybe if you're familiar with physically based rendered materials, PBR materials. But displacement maps they're kind of all of that. And if you're familiar with a height map, it's kind of doing all the same thing. In previous versions of Revit, we only had access to a bump map, a bump file. And all that did was really add dimension and depth to a particular flat image that you had for what that material would look like. And that's all great. But now Enscape is taking this up to the next level because it's almost like baking that into Enscape, and Enscape's running that and pushing that farther with displacement maps. Displacement maps, there's no extra map or anything you have to do. You simply have to just build the material, which is fine. We're going to build them anyways. But editing the material in a certain way is going to allow you to take advantage of Enscape's displacement. And it's per material, so it's not like it's going to displace your entire model. But I did want to look at a couple examples here. So I've got this wall, and it's all about materials. So I'm just going to have to build the correct material that I want. And so I've got this brick, and I want to make sure that I have a brick that looks good. And so right now I don't have any material as far as appearance goes on the brick. And so I'm going to just replace an asset. And of course, you can always create any sort of material that you might want. It doesn't really matter. But I'm just going to search brick. And because I'm not going to make my own brick, I'm going to start with these bricks. So if you're familiar with Revit 2020 and on, you can see that everything with an orange tab here, an orange triangle here, is a legacy material, which means it's using the older bump map style where you don't have the option of changing to a normal map. You don't have anything else. And those are the type of materials that we're going to need to use. So if we come in here, we could see, really any of these will work just fine. I'm going to add this in and then hit OK and then OK. And we can see that, okay, it's applied, but I want to go back into Enscape. So with Enscape over here, I'll now come over to my model. We can see, there's my brick, and I don't necessarily like this. I'm going to change the brick because it just happens to have a bunch of holes, and I don't want to try and see through this wall. It doesn't quite make sense for this particular application. So let's go ahead and come back to this material. And I want to make sure that I change this out to some other brick. And again, it doesn't really matter. Just because I want this to be brick, it could be anything else. The displacement maps will work with any sort of brick. It worked with any sort of material whatsoever. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to hit apply, and we've got the bricks there. They're not too bad. I like it. And so this is very particular to Revit, and unfortunately, this is the part of the displacement maps that I don't like about Enscape, because while it's built into every material, it's going to be different for every program that you use. And so I'm going to cover just Revit. So SketchUp or another program might be. It is different because you actually have an Enscape material, and you'll do all of that in the Enscape material, and it'll make a little more sense because you could see it there. Whereas with Revit, there's not a whole lot to see. It's more like it just kind of happens on the Enscape side once you change particular settings. And that setting in this case is going to be changing the bump to a number that is higher than 500, like 500 or higher, which you might be like, what the heck is that? Well, we're going to get into that. So if we look at relief pattern here, we could see that I've got a bump amount here, which is great. And you can see it's set to 0.15. And so I want to set that, we can see we do have some bump here. It's not too much, but when I come to the side, it just looks such a flat image. It doesn't look that great. It looks okay from, far away. And of course it's tiled, but what I can say is it's not bad, but it's not really taking advantage of the displacement, especially what now Enscape has. Now, if I want to put this amount all the way up, I could hit apply, and we could see that, we get a little more definition. Again, it still looks flat, but there's more to it now. So we need to put this bump amount to 500 or more to see what this might look like from Enscape displacing this. So I'm going to put this to 500, and it's not going to work. And I ran in circles when I first realized this, but it's not necessarily that it won't work, but it's the type of material that we're using. Again, this has everything to do with the fact that I'm using a default material that's out of Revit, and I didn't actually bother making it from a generic material myself. So let's go back to replace this asset, and we want to change it out. We want to find a brick that's actually going to work for us. And the way to determine a brick that will work for us is based on this type. So this type, you can see, like what I was using before was a masonry type. And so that masonry will give us a relief pattern in the form of a bump file. You can see there's whatever non-uniform running bump.png. So it's a PNG file that's a bump file. And that's all fine. It would work great, except the material was built as a masonry type material. And that won't work. We're going to have to use a generic. So like either of these will work. If I sort by type there, we can see that I've got my couple generics here. That's great. I will go ahead and add this Norman 1/3 running. And so the idea is maybe you wanted to change out some of these images. You can add this type of material in, and because the only thing that makes it generic is the fact that I have all these different options to choose from, and it's not specific to a type of material or type of material in the real world. So now you can see I've got bump, which is great. And now I don't have an image associated to this, so maybe I don't want to use this one. So I can search brick again, and I could go back to my generic, and I can try and see if this chord has one. Maybe instead of brick, I will search CMU. And we can see that I have all these different masonry types, but here we go. I've got a generic split face, and it's running. Let's go ahead and add that, and we can see that I have, yes, I've got a nice looking generic map, and then I've got a bump map, which is good. And you can see the default value for the amount is actually not point something. It's actually 10, which is great. And so just to know, if you see generic up here, and if you see bump especially, and really what's going to confirm it for you, if you can use the displacement maps within Enscape, is the fact that if you see an amount that's greater than 2, in this case I see 10, so that's great. I'll hit apply. We could see, that's not bad. I don't have the scale that's necessarily correct here. If I think that each one of these is 3 feet or 12 inches wide, 16 inches wide. If they're 16 inches wide, that's about 3. So we go ahead and put it at 48 inches, just because that seems to make sense. 4 feet wide. It's going to be a little closer to the real scale. This might be a little bit big, but that looks good. It's not bad. I will say this does look pretty good already. I can see that there's clearly some displacement going on here, even though it does appear to be a flat image. Like as I get close, it looks pretty flat. But as looking farther away, there's a lot of detail in it already. And that's because I have a higher value of bump, and I can do whatever I want. So I can put this at anything, 150. I can hit apply, and I can see that, it didn't seem to do a whole lot. I can put it at 300. We're going to get a lot more bump. And there's a point to where, it's still a flat file, but it doesn't look that great. But this is where we have the option of putting 500. So if I put 500 in, now this is going to take advantage of Enscape's displacement file in of itself. So I'll hit apply, and as soon as I do that, whoa, what do we see here? This looks, I'm going to say, kind of bad. But, as I zoom in here, we can see, oh, look at all that displacement. I'm getting lots of displacement, which is really nice. Now, I will say displacement in Enscape is not, very quickly, it's not for viewing objects this close. It just isn't, unfortunately. It's just the way it is. Now, when I zoom back, I can really see some nice displacement from this. And I can't say this is like the best material and best example here, but nonetheless, I can really see that there is clearly displacement going on. And while it does look a bit weird, it does work, because as soon as I go to 499 and hit apply, that's all gone. It's a flat image again. And, maybe you like the way this looks better, and in a sense that it does look better, but let's look for another material where this might work. So I'll type in concrete, and we can see that all these generic concretes would work. I can do panels, and as long as I have a bump map, then that would work just fine. I'll hit apply, and And we could see, that I've got concrete panels. I might want to change the scale here, and I probably do. So let's go ahead and make these 24 inches by 24 inches and hit apply. And, that's pretty good. That's probably too big. So maybe 1 foot, maybe 1.5 feet. That works. Make sure we're tiled. Okay. And so, yeah, again, that's not too bad. We'll put this at, 200, and we, get a little more definition there. Not too bad again, but we'll put this at 500 and we can see what the displacement map looks like. So, okay, yeah, that's clearly a lot of displacement. As I zoom in here, I could see that, I'm getting a really dramatic look in these seams, which, up close, again, I'm not going to recommend you use displacement for things that you're looking at this close, just because it doesn't look that great. But I get distinct shadow lines in between all these seams, which look really nice, especially from a distance. So, that's going to be up to you. I really do enjoy this, at least as an option. I can't say I'm going to do it all the time, but nonetheless, it's an option. So it's really nice. Now, I'm not familiar with Vectorworks, but now Vectorworks is integrated within Enscape, and so you can use all of your assets and really work nicely with Vectorworks. And the final new update that we need to look at for Enscape 2.9 is offline Enscape assets, which is pretty nice. As soon as I check offline Enscape assets, I could see that there's something I need to go through. And it says to use offline assets, please select a directory where the downloaded Enscape assets should be located. The content of the selected folder will be deleted before the assets are downloaded. So basically, this is going to allow us to take all of our assets offline. So imagine you have all of your custom asset library and everything. You're building it for your firm, and you've got it set up at a network location so everyone can access that. But you want to be able to take these offline with you, which is really nice. So what you can do is, let's say you've got your laptop, you've got it hooked up to the network, and you've been producing all of those assets on the network drive. You can actually choose to select that drive and, in a sense, save it locally so you can access all of those assets whenever you take your laptop home. This is a great way to do that. So you're basically going to choose a location where you want to pull those from and save them locally. And the nice thing here is that you actually have the option of having these update to the latest version of those assets, because maybe you've done this before and you want to take the most updated assets from the network drive. That just makes sense. So this is going to be a way that you could do that. And it seems to be manual in a sense that you'll need to download them again, which it's fine. I'm not going to go through this necessarily because I may or may not use the custom asset library myself. But if I end up doing that and I need to take them locally, this is exactly how I would do it. And again, finally, I want to show you once again the general settings and performance. The performance tab, I can choose rest mode or not. And when I uncheck rest mode, I can see that the water is moving, the grass is still moving, even when I'm not doing anything as far as movement in Enscape. It's really nice. It's, it adds more life to it. I don't have to continually move around to see that update, which, if you have rest mode on or off, it is going to be based on your particular system. In this case, for this project, it's not big. I don't need to worry about that. So I probably want to leave that off so I can just always see it live and working and looking good and making my scene look so much better. So that will do it for Enscape 2.9. Some exciting stuff, some new stuff, lots of assets. Really nice to see. If you did happen to learn something, please demolish that like button. It helps me out a lot. Also, considering changing the face of that subscribe button to existing, that does as well. So have a wonderful day. Hope this helped you out. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.